Hamatakwepe, Mimalakota.
Because I can use you to prove to the raging atheist that atheism is foolishness.
Yeah, that's been the overwhelming consensus, actually. Trust me, on the inside, I was screaming.
Oh, I'm sure. Do it with Arn Ra. I mean, he would be the perfect person to talk about evolution with you, I think.
Well, I'd love to talk to Arn Ra about evolution and creation and stuff, but I just don't think it would go too well based on the fact that he's always interrupting his opponents.
Matt's not that bright. He's just not that bright.
So welcome, Sai. If you want to give a brief introduction of yourself, I'm sure folks here are fairly familiar with you.
Well, thanks for having me on. And I'm a retired research scientist.
Me and you better be best friends.
I love the opening. That was sweet.
Yeah, thank you. It's just like a temporary one, but yeah, it's I like it too. Thank you. What's up, heathens and demons? Praise is here, not Sky Out. I had to do a last bit of reorganizing because Sky Out's an idiot and doesn't know how to schedule, and he's on Scholar Fiction right now. But me and Praise, we're gonna have a conversation. Anyway, we were scheduling it out, and so Praise was good enough to fill in. So Praise is here. We're going to have an interesting conversation. This is going to be fun. And Ali is not going to be in a moderator role. Praise said he's cool with talking to both of us. So, yeah, it'll be like a real Seeing Red. Praise I Am That I Am is here. I forgot to put his link in the description. First time in a while that I've actually.
God damn it, Knock.
It wasn't intentional. It wasn't because he was a Christian.
No, sure it wasn't. I see how it is.
Yeah. But I'm like, it's become part of my routine, and just
I was just starting to trust you, and you forgot. You blew it.
For some reason, it just didn't. It wasn't in the routine when I set it up today. So
it's because you were setting up a shit show.
But what's up, audience? I haven't even looked to see who's here. We've got
Tartan in the house, Jeremy Pace, Frosty Brand, Free Spirit, Shay,
Mr. Parker. What's up, Frosty Brand? What's up? This should be a really good conversation because everybody knows that me and Praise get along so well.
Yeah.
But Ali's here. What's up, Ali? And then we'll let Praise introduce himself and show his channel, and we'll get this conversation rolling.
So, hey guys, so today's actually kind of a special day. Y'all can thank my husband for letting me be here because today is actually his birthday. Asshole I've been married to for 8 years, haha. He turned 34 today. I love him to death. I gave him the option, either I can do it or I can make Knock reschedule it. It's up to you, because we originally didn't expect him to have tonight off. He was like, you know what, I'll watch your show because I love your guys' content. That'll be a part of my birthday. So I told him, okay, fine, I'm going to embarrass the fuck out of you by giving you a shout out. So yeah, it's my hubby's birthday today. I'm here because he decided that he would rather watch my show for the next couple of hours than delay it in some way. Especially because originally it was supposed to be a debate and he hasn't seen me moderate one in a while.
Congratulations, though, Ali, for your relationship, but also tell your husband happy birthday from Praise.
Thank you. He's watching right now. He's probably lurking in the chat, so he'll probably see it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to actually call the thing with Sky Out a debate. I mean, it'll be like it'll be me talking to an idiot, but whatever. I'm looking forward to having Sky Out back on. It's been a while.
So, Skyo, welcome back to the channel. Like I said, last time you and I talked.
Praise, Ali. Skyo, I was just
praise, sorry. Okay, you just dissed on. Okay, sorry, my brain, man. All right, I'm not high, but I've been spending most of today with Steve.
I am very high. I've got the good medical going on right now. So yeah, we're living pretty tight.
But yeah, Praise, last time you and I talked was back in the Discord when we were doing all of the revamps and stuff. We got into kind of a debate in the chat, and then you hadn't been around for a while, so it's nice to have you back.
Yeah,
I kind of pissed him off.
Yeah. Yeah, those old Discord days. I'm kind of like active again back into it. So if you ever wanted to engage in something again, that'd be cool, Allie.
We've got debate rooms in Nox Nation. So if you decide to come back, like there are rules for them. If you read them, there's one that's a shit show room where you can say whatever the fuck you want, and then there's a couple of moderated debate rooms for more like civilized conversation, for lack of a better way to put it. Like we finally balanced that whole community versus debate room type issue, and it's been kind of nice.
Nice.
It's been
Yeah,
kinda
I want to
quiet.
check that out.
I haven't been on it so much, so I'm going to start being on it more, and we're going to start promoting it more, trying to build Discord back up and get people interested and involved again.
What if you get Darth roaming around in there though?
I might.
Darth got himself in trouble twice just trying to be in the Discord. He's limited to the after show
Darth's
chat.
another
He
one
has
of-
his own special. He has his own special role, and he gets to go to the after show chat, and that's the only
Both
part of my
times.
Discord I want him in.
Both times, Darth couldn't figure out the simple password process to get into the server, and I had to force Ali to just push his idiotic ass through. I'm just like, he's not, and I would even like call it before. I'm like, he's not going to get it. You might as well just push him through, and he wouldn't get it. It was.
So I gave him his own.
absolutely
So I decided, okay, no, you're not going to get special treatment. You're going to get your own special little role, and you can sit in just the after show chat. Like that's the only place you can be. You can't read the fucking rules.
Yeah. That'd be interesting discussion with Nock, because I know Darth had a discussion with Nock, and I think Nock was kind of, he brought a lot on Nock there. Like he wasn't really prepared for that. The presuppositional arguments, and I know that that can be hard to. Yeah,
I was very unfamiliar with Darth Dawkins anyway. Like I had heard the name, and I had seen a couple of his shit shows, like with like Skylar Fiction. But I didn't, for one, like the first time he came in, I had no idea I had Darth Dawkins coming in onto my channel. None whatsoever. He was calling himself Evolution False. I guess other people knew that Evolution False was Darth Dawkins at the time. I think it was like when he first started using that name. And I had no idea what I was walking into. And when it comes to like philosophical discussions, I'm still a baby when it comes to those kinds of discussions. I like philosophy has never really been something that I'm interested in. And
I got you.
It just isn't. I'm trying to fix that.
Quick shout out from the live chat, by the way. Happy belated birthday to Leia, who apparently is shilling their subreddit r/anti-NIFB. So if y'all are
happy
interested
birthday!
in
Yeah,
that,
she said that she would do that when she set it up. Yeah, I'll try to check that out if I ever have time. I'm really bad at reading anything anymore. It seems.
yeah, you don't even read your DMs.
I read the Bible.
Nice. Yeah, I respect that.
I mean, a chapter at a time as I'm making videos on that stupid shit. But
so speaking of reading the Bible, I'm curious. Originally, you and Nock apparently were getting into a debates about another YouTuber, and obviously, we try our best not to cover drama too much on Seeing Red unless it's something like major in the atheist community, like calling out Predator or something like that.
I like talking about Jill. He's such a Nazi. Like I would like to know like. Do you still are you still cool with Jill after so he tries to run away from admitting to being a Nazi, and I'll give it to that. I'll give that to him. Maybe he's just too stupid to realize what he admitted to, but he's still like clearly a white supremacist type mentality, even though he claims to be a black man, probably is a black man. It wouldn't be the first time that's happened, but are you still cool with him after all the crazy shit he says?
Well, I mean, I don't try to get involved in person with his stuff. I just, as a Christian brother, I just like to back him up, and just provide.
I'm not smoking weed. I can smoke a cigarette on camera, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't support all the stuff that Jill says. So I mean, it's not like I'm like his little slave or something. No.
I think it's a strange form of playing team sports, though. When if the person who does a horrendous
friendship, because I don't ever see you say the crazy shit that he says. I don't even know really your politics. Like I assume you like Trump probably because of his judge.
Not really. I don't really like Trump. I really don't. I think
maybe for his Supreme Court shit. I know you don't like abortion. Yeah. I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah, I don't support abortion, but I do believe that forgiveness can be extended to people that have, done abortions. So it's not like maybe I don't know if Jill has the same sentiments. I don't know.
I mean, if we're
yeah.
going into abortion, though, I have a nasty fucking question for you.
Shoot.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a very general version of it. Do you believe that abortions should happen in cases where either the mother wouldn't survive or the mother is too young to carry the baby to term?
That's a great question. I believe that if the mother is going to die, I'll put it this way. If the mother if she can salvage the baby, even if she dies and she chooses that, if she wants the baby to be saved, then I say let her.
That's
So
not
I
what
would put
that's not what I asked, though. I asked if abortions are okay if the mother wants to save her own life.
I would split. Yeah, I was adding something like a condition attached to that, though. I would say I'm just going to add something to that. If the mother feels she can salvage the baby, then I would say it's okay to do that. But without that condition, I would say no.
So if this baby cannot survive, but it would still kill the mother to carry the baby to term, you still think that that the mother should just die?
Yeah, again, if it's all up to the mother, if she decides that it's best that if her life's dependent on, both lives are dependent on her of killing the baby, then I would say then the mother can make that decision. So I say it's ultimately the mother's decision no matter what. Yeah.
So where in the Bible does it say it's wrong to have abortions?
Exodus 21, I think 26, somewhere in there.
All right, let me pull that up really quick. What's your favorite translation, Praise?
I don't like any of them, to be honest. I like the interlinear, that I can have access to, like a lexicon, like a medium where I can check out languages. I think most of the English translations are flawed, but they're not like totally, completely.
2126 doesn't have anything to do with abortions.
Hold on, it's somewhere. I'll get it real quick. It's 20. It's in the 20s though.
Well, so do you think God has a problem with killing unborn people or people in general?
Yes.
Well, then why does God do it?
And that's a whole nother discussion that we can go into, but I would say that it might appear that way in the text, but there's something called hyperbole and there's war rhetoric, and I would say that.
Do you believe in the Great Flood?
No.
You don't believe that the Great Flood happened? Do you believe?
No.
Do you believe that Moses led the Jews out of Egypt, and that God intervened in that?
Yes.
So what about the firstborn children of Egypt that God killed?
Yeah, I've had these arguments, but if you actually check out the text, it says that he permits the death spirit to kill the children, and I don't think he was directly related. But here's the thing, too. You might disagree with this. Go ahead, Ellie.
Praise. I was just going to say, I don't think that that's the same thing. Like, for example, if Nock were to tell one specific follower right now to go kill somebody and they did it, he would currently be held legally responsible under our current system. In the same way that if you were to, say, commission a hitman to kill somebody that you know, you would be held legally responsible even though you weren't the one that slit that person's throat. So how is it any different for God?
Well, for one, he did warn the Egyptians to put lamb's blood above their doorposts. Like, he gave them a choice.
No, he warned the Israelites. So the Israelites did that, so their children wasn't massacred by whatever he sent. It's like, so say a terrorist comes into America and they release a deadly virus. Say Corona-19 is. We'll feed some conspiracy theories here. We'll call it Corona. What if Corona was a terrorist attack? Would that terrorist be responsible, or would it be it's just a virus doing what a virus does? So I mean, if God sent this spirit to kill the firstborn children of Egypt, God is responsible for that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, sure, but indirectly he's responsible. He's not directly
So
responsible.
would the
Same.
terrorists be indirectly responsible for releasing that virus on a population?
Well, if it was calculated, yes, then he would be directly responsible for that.
Well, you just admitted that God warned the Israelites and told them to put whatever it was on their door, like goat's blood or whatever. So it was strategic.
I
Right,
would
but
also like to make a historical point, and that was if you actually talk to a Jewish person about this story, I'm sure Tartan will back me up on this. There's actually a number of passages that regard the fact that for lambs were actually sacred in certain parts of Egypt. So killing lambs, part of the reason why, Moses supposedly had this issue with, the Pharaoh, part of the reason that the story was written is because Israelites, the very few that did actually reside in Egypt, not quote at that time, because again, historically, there's no evidence of the Exodus. But even if you look at the historical precedent for what we understand about Egypt at the time, the Israelite sacrifice of lambs was considered to be unholy by the standards of that area. So telling the Egyptians to slaughter what they considered to be, potentially sacred animals to their particular gods, as far as a polytheist is concerned, when a god from a different religion supposedly, gives you a commandment through another person, that's not the god you're worshiping. So even if you acknowledge that the Hebrew god was real, and even if this were true, from a polytheistic perspective, from the Egyptian perspective or a Greek person's perspective, what he did was still immoral. He killed a bunch of people that were not his followers for not obeying an order of his. But again, the Bible doesn't even say he warned the Egyptians to do it.
And they had nothing, he didn't kill the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was the dude, the bad guy of the story. The Pharaoh was the dude holding the Jews down. He chose to, I guess he did do it to the Pharaoh because, the Pharaoh had to live with that grief. But he killed a bunch of children. So if an Egyptian woman was pregnant with her first child, did that spirit kill that child? And I think according to the text, we would have to agree that it did. So that right there is God committing an abortion on a woman.
yeah, so there's a few things I'd like to tackle. You may actually make valid points.
Go ahead. Yeah, we've been talking quite a bit, so go ahead.
Yeah, I would say number one, Exodus 1:22 brings up that Egyptians have been killing the Hebrews' firstborn children, firstborn males, for many years, up to 400 years. This is in Genesis 15:18. I think it was 4 generations, which is like 400 years or something. That's what usually biblical scholars have what they come to that understanding. But
Most scholars don't believe that the Exodus happened, though, because again, there's absolutely no evidence that.
Let him talk. I'm going to take notes. We've been talking, Ali, so let's let him let's let him talk.
Yeah, I like to respond to that. I just want to try to get these points out real quick. So, like I said, Exodus 1:22 shows that the Egyptians were the ones murdering the firstborn males of Hebrews for many years. And you can verify that in Genesis 15:18. So, but here's the thing: in the Torah, it does say eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So, legally, God had a right to do that, to punish those who have been inflicting or murdering His own people. You might disagree with that or whatever. That's fine. But here's another thing.
Genesis 15:18 says, "On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham and said to your descendants, I give this land from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." Doesn't say anything about them killing.
All right, hold on real quick. Yeah, I'll get it. It's I always get these passages they're within 1 or 2 verses.
I'm not saying you're wrong. Maybe it does. I mean,
yeah.
But you can continue, and then. I would address that point.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's Genesis 15:16. I'm sorry, Rage. So there, I would say that what we call the lex talionis, what they scholars understand in the ancient Near East is called lex talionis. But I would also say that God did state what He was going to do to Egyptians if they didn't follow something. I mean, the Pharaoh knew what God was planning out to do to him. Like He says, "I'm going to bring this to you. I'm going to bring this to you. I'm going to bring this to you." I don't think the Pharaoh was completely clueless. And if any negligence was on the part, it should have been on Pharaoh. If he didn't warn his people this was going to happen, I would say that he's negligent.
But
Not-
here's the problem again. You have this foreign god effectively punishing a large group of people for one man's actions, and then you call this god a god of justice.
Yeah, I understand that objection, but just remember what the Egyptians have been doing to the
But
Hebrews.
did every single Egyptian in all of the land do that though?
Well, all right. So it doesn't say that actually. 15. We'll start at 12 just to give it the context. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, "Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure." It doesn't say anything about them killing their firstborn or nothing. It literally doesn't say anything about that.
No, but I'm using that because the 4 generations, 400 years, but it's Exodus 122. That is what you're looking for. I was using those together in tandem.
Except for the Exodus 122, again, we're going to pretend that this is historical for a second. Exodus 122 talks about one Pharaoh doing it once. The father of the Pharaoh that Moses ultimately comes up against, if I recall correctly.
All right, and that's giving that the Bible is correct. I think that history has pretty much shown that the Jews weren't slaves to Egypt, but actually a working class. So I mean, I think that there were probably Jew slaves. I'm not going to take that away, but like the Jewish people as a whole weren't enslaved. They were actually a working class. I think there's pretty significant evidence suggesting that historically.
Well, yeah, I'll concede that too to a point, but the Exodus 1 does say that they were treated with rigor. So maybe for some classes that's true, but not all.
I think you could probably say that the slaves in Israel were treated with rigor, right?
No, because Leviticus 25:46 directly outlaws to treat your brethren with rigor.
I'm not intentionally, trying to push us into that conversation yet. I was just kind of giving a dig. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We will get to some slavery, because you'll have a lot better time of it with me than you would with Dr. Josh. So I'll give you your moment.
Nice.
It's just, and I don't understand this mindset that you have, because again, even if you were to try and, Knock is right repeatedly, there is no historical evidence for the Exodus or for any sort of slavery in Egypt, and the Egyptians were notoriously detailed record keepers. You could not strike a record like that out of the Egyptian records. There's just way, way too much writing that they did. We have a shitload of it from them.
Oh yeah, and you're right, but but here's the problem: is the dating of the Exodus. See, what scholars and historians have found is that if you change the date, just by a few years, it perfectly aligns. There's a bunch of evidence for it.
Are you talking about that James Cameron documentary? I saw that shit.
Yeah, and I think IP kind of covered on this too a little bit. If you guys want to check that out, but
James Cameron is Hollywood, though.
Yeah, I think there's other people too, though. I think he might just be reverberating what they're saying.
It was a good documentary. I'll give you that. It was compelling. I haven't looked at the history, of it. I think that a lot of Christians or a lot of believers try to kind of bend what the science is saying to fit their narrative. But I thought it was an interesting documentary.
My problem here still comes back to number one, that prophecy basically shows that God, quote, allowed this to happen.
We're going to get there, Brian Stevens. We will be getting to slavery.
And number two,
this Brian Stevens. Go ahead, Elliot.
Well, number one, again, that verse claims that if you were to pretend that the Bible is historical for a second, that, God basically allowed this to happen, knowing that he would then hurt somebody and their entire people afterwards. How, again, does that make him a god of justice? If he allowed that suffering to happen for 400 years, deliberately knowing it was going to happen, and then only after 400 years decided to then punish ordinary people, not just the people who did it, but it said all of the firstborn of Egypt, every single human, all of the firstborn, killed them all off?
Right. So see,
For the actions of one person who the Bible also repeatedly says he fucked with so that he would continue to say no, so he would be able to do these things to the
Yeah,
Egyptian
like God
people.
literally hardened the Pharaoh's heart so he would continue to say no. I mean, it was like
right.
it was like one of the. I mean, I had this series called "The Bible Is Stupid," and that's probably
Sure,
one
yeah.
of
I would love
the
to
dumbest parts
address
of
all
the
that.
Bible. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. We keep over talking. I'm sorry, man.
No, that's fine. This is your show, man. I'm just happy to be.
I know.
on your show.
I want to give you a chance to talk, though. I don't want to keep over.
All right.
talking.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll just do one thing by one. So first, Ali was saying like it kind of seems cruel or unjust for God to bring these punishments on these people that seem to have not been part of it or whatever. And I would say that God did give admonition to these people, like to the Pharaoh, and to stop doing these certain things. It's not like God just came out of the blue and just did all this stuff.
It was the Pharaoh, not them. And also, you're talking about a period of time where you don't have something like the internet to get this information across. When you're talking about ancient Egypt, you're talking about thousands upon thousands of miles of kingdom. There is no way that all of that information would have been able to get across to the entirety of Egypt instantly in under a night. Like, that idea is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And also, you're asking a bunch of people to kill a sacred animal and rub its blood over their doorway.
And that comes to back to abortion. So I kind of struggle with abortion. It's an issue that I advocate because I'm pro-choice. I don't believe that pro-life people are actually pro-life. I think they're anti-abortion. But I struggle with it because it's not something like I would want to ever have to deal with. I wouldn't want to have that choice. Luckily I've never had to have that choice. There was one time, but I'm not even sure if it was. I mean, it was a really crazy situation. I'm not even sure if it was real. But that was her choice, and I wasn't even really involved with it, and wasn't even given an option to be involved with that. But I struggle with it. But even from a Christian point of view, I just don't see where you could have this scriptural argument against abortion. I can understand being against it morally, because it's your politics or whatever. I can't understand it, trying to put something on God that God hasn't clearly expressed himself. Like, how can you understand God's intention here when scripture just doesn't really address this?
Right. So I understand what you're saying. You want a more explicit passage or something that conveys that. But here's how I respond to that is that God doesn't treat us like pets. Like, see, an owner would say, no, no, Fido, don't do that. Go in the corner, something like that. God doesn't treat us like pets. So he put his laws, his moral laws in our heart. And I would say it's a natural intuition to not probably kill your child, or a baby. And I think that is where I draw the line where
maybe I would agree with you. I would agree wholeheartedly. It's a natural intuition not to kill your baby, your child, but that's when it's a baby and a child. And I think the science clearly expresses that that it's not a child for a certain amount of, or it's not a living being for a certain amount of time. Right. But not only the science express that, your Bible expresses that. I mean, the Bible seems very clear to me that you become a human being when you take your first breath of life. There's I don't remember the passage, but I know it's a direct passage from the Bible that talks about that.
Yeah, I might push back on that. I would say if you read Luke 1, John leapt in the womb when Jesus was conceived. So I would say life begins at conception, but I know that's controversial. I know
John, that what? Say that again.
John the Baptist leapt in the womb when when Jesus was conceived.
Do you believe that shit actually happened?
Yeah, I've actually looked it up, and believe it or not, babies do leap in the womb on certain things.
So when Gabriel was raping Mary and Jesus was conceived,
that is such, that's just such propaganda, man. In fact, I've already debunked that. If it's in Luke in the same chapter, Mary is, if you check the Greek tenses out, the parsing of the verb, it's in a mood where it's like, I'll give you an example, like a teenager wanting keys to drive their mother's car or their mother and father's car. It's in that mood. So no, she gave what do you call it? She gave the word, like you allow it to happen. Like she was permitting that to happen.
I don't think I have read this text thoroughly, and it's only mentioned in one of the Gospels. I can't remember which one it was, but it clearly says Gabriel came down from the sky. I think it clearly says that Mary was made unconscious, but it doesn't say that she ever gave consent. And I don't know, how she was impregnated. I'm kind of trolling you a little bit when I say rape, but I imply, like, I have to assume that Gabriel did something to Mary to make her become pregnant if Joseph had not indeed done the deed himself. Because I don't believe in an immaculate conception. I don't think that there's any reason for any sane person to believe that a virgin can just become pregnant.
Well, I mean, even in nature, there's immaculate conceptions, though. I mean, you have virgin births many times in nature. So I would say I don't think you should just push it aside.
Like, what do you mean, like virgin births? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I would still. There's several different types of animals out there that don't need sex to bear children.
That's a different thing completely, though. That's not a virgin birth.
Well, I mean, that's what a virgin birth is. It means there's no sex going on to be impregnated.
No, that's just how they evolved, and they don't mate to reproduce. I assume you're talking to like tadpoles.
And I'm not really familiar with
fish lay eggs, and then fish lay eggs, and then the male fish come and fertilize it. That's
something like that. But
that's the way they evolve. That's not like like, all right. So if a male has there ever been a case of fish laying eggs and those fish hatching without a male coming to fertilize them? Because that would be the equivalent. That's not the other way around isn't an equivalent to a virgin birth.
No, but there's actually stated cases. There's actually documented cases where there is virgin births in nature without father fertilizing it or even a sperm.
I'd have to look into that. I've never heard of that.
But I'm curious if any of those cases are human, because again, you can make the argument that aphids are born pregnant, but aphids are not humans.
That would be my point too. Being mindful is that you can artificially inseminate and still be a virgin. So, like, I think your best argument here is that Gabriel brought God's,
right, and it wasn't Gabriel anyway. And Gabriel just brought the message down. It was actually the Holy Spirit that caused.
No, it was literally Gabriel that came down. Like, the Bible is pretty.
Yeah, clear. I know. No, I'm saying he gave the message, but the conception came from the Holy Spirit.
Well, yeah, I think it does say something along those lines. Holy Spirit. Holy rape. Tomato.
Can I take this? Yeah. Can I take this in a slightly different discussion, though?
Yeah. I think we've exhausted this one.
Well, we're still talking about abortion, though, and I'm kind of curious. Praise, have you ever met somebody who had to have one in order to save their own life?
No.
Well, congratulations. Now you have.
Wow. Okay.
I was 12 years old, and I was assaulted by my father.
Yeah, and I
morally culpable for having had an abortion so that I did not die trying to carry a baby to term at 12 that was born of incest.
I can't. I'm not gonna. There's no way I could even ever I could never, come in there and say that's wrong. Or I'm not gonna. I don't have the place to do that. So I don't. Maybe God knows your heart. So I'll say God knows your heart based on that.
I don't know if that's your heart thing, though. If my life was literally in danger and I was literally 12 years old and the baby was a product of incest, I'm pretty sure there's a yes or a no here that's fairly obvious, and I'm wondering which one it is to you. You keep trying to stammer over escaping this, but you have an actual example for somebody sitting in front of you who has had to make that decision.
Personally, I would say that's wrong, because I believe that even if it's incest, I still believe that the child could be a productive member of society. That's just my opinion, though.
So
that's
even though
that's how far it goes.
Carried it to term because I was 12 years old.
Wait, and that does answer my question. I was going to ask if if you thought, I mean, a victim of rape, having so like I couldn't imagine being a rape victim, and I wouldn't want a child to be in a situation to where they're hated for something they didn't even do. And I think that that's happened several times. I think a lot of women have made the choice not to have an abortion in those situations, and have had a child that they ended up resenting and it was not the child's fault, but the child ended up bearing the fruits of that, paying that cost. I don't know. This is a very hard situation.
Yeah,
and I think with this discussion, it's the hardest question for a Christian to really answer, or for a pro-life proponent to really answer, because it does become about morality. But I'm of course I'm for abortion. I think up to 8 weeks we've pretty much determined that it's pretty much just it's a zygote. It's not really a human being. And I think it's actually longer than that. What's the current? It's where we're at currently. I think is based upon the science. What's it at now, Allie? It's like 12 weeks, 16 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 12 weeks is approximately when a fetus can exist outside of the womb with some level of help from science.
So and it goes to the original point. I'm not trying to take away from.
It's not 12 weeks. I don't think that's only 4 months in. I think existing outside of the womb is closer to like 7 months, 8 months in. Anything before that, and the baby can't exist outside of the womb. Yeah,
but I mean, the law right now is what, 16 weeks or 12 weeks?
It depends on your state. Let me go dig into that really quick while you guys discuss, and I'll pop in and interrupt somebody with the.
Sure. This is one of the toughest conversations to have. Most people run away from it. I give you credit for not running away from it, especially Allie put you in a tough situation there. You held to your guns. That's a horrible story that Allie's just shared, that she shared with me before. I think that's really the crux of the difficulty, because pro-lifers have an issue with that for some reason, and they think that it's because of God, and that's why I went to the question about why does God do it himself. Like it seems to me like this is pretty much a no-brainer, that it's a God argument. It's not a political argument, and really a God argument should have no place in the political discourse or in the governance of this country, and yet it does. And I think I find that very problematic. If you believe in the country and the Constitution, I would find that very problematic.
Okay, so I've got a website up right here, and it looks like most states, it's 20 to 24 weeks is you have to perform the abortion before 20 to 24 weeks. So several of them, it's viability. So like in my state, it's viability. So if the fetus can't survive outside the womb, then it's still legal. Particularly if the fetus would be born dead, it's also illegal, or if it has like birth defects. In several states, yours, Michigan, the law is also viability. Praise, what state are you in? Like,
Oklahoma.
Not to dock yourselves. In Oklahoma, it's 20 weeks.
Okay.
So it looks like the average range in the U.S. is either by viability for some states or 20 to 24 weeks, depending on the state. After 20 to 24 weeks, it can only be performed if the woman's life is in danger.
Right, and I'm not in a position to make a claim on that, because I really haven't studied it. I'm not really learned in that subject, so I can't really speak on that.
I had a doctor tell me to my face that if I was stupid enough to try to carry that baby, I would die.
I don't think a 12-year-old should be forced to carry anybody's child. No, I hopefully you're not like the Misha Popoff type of Christian that thinks that like 16-year-old girls should be married off to older, more seasonable men.
No,
I didn't think you would.
I have much compassion for Allie there, and I'm saying God would even if let's just say, Allie, that you came to believe her in Christ, it would be forgiven. Even if you didn't, I don't even think you need to repent about it, but just as long as you admit you're a sinner, you would be forgiven anyway. So God's not out to, like I'm saying, John 3:17, he came to save the world, not to condemn the world. So,
well, then why does very few people actually end up going to heaven?
Because they like darkness more than light.
So like couldn't he just save the world if he wanted to? Why didn't send in his son to be tortured and murdered and brutalated and sacrificed work?
Well, for number one, sin is death. So it's either we had to die.
It's not dead. I mean, I was sinning this morning before my daughter woke up when I was taking a shower.
Yeah, welcome to the club, brother. I mean, we all sin.
So that's what I'm saying. It's not dead. Like, I mean, God's all powerful. He could snap his fingers and it'd be gone.
But that would be unjust. That he would need to deliberate. See, a court process is a just way to solve criminal cases. So we're criminals by definition.
But I thought he loved us. Like, why not just make us perfect like him?
Well, because he wants you to actually choose that, though. Like he can't just impose his forgiveness on you. You have to want that forgiveness. That'd be coercive. What if you don't want what is to say if you're a person that doesn't want forgiveness? That would be actually a type of rape to do that. He would be pushing that on you.
I mean, that doesn't really make any sense. So like, did he created us all, right? Like, do you believe in Adam and Eve? Like, were Adam and Eve the first human beings?
No,
they weren't. All right.
So do you believe in evolution then?
I'm an older creationist, but I'm an intelligent design proponent. But I'm not like this, younger creationist type that God, did everything within a couple minutes or something. No, I don't believe that.
Okay, so what's your version of intelligent design look like then?
It's just like the Cambrian explosion. I would say is where he brought all life, or 2/3 of the animal phyla into existence, and over time, like animals just adapt, to their environment, whatever. And
so you do believe in evolution, because that's
maybe,
evolution.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know.
Because evolution is the process by which new species come into existence, and by talking about the Cambrian explosion and adaptation, like you're literally describing the process of evolution in very simplistic terms.
Right. I'm not sure if it's Darwinian though. I don't know if that constitutes Darwinian evolution. I don't know.
Well, the thing is Darwin got a lot wrong, and anybody who believes in evolution, quote unquote, and I don't really think you can believe in evolution, like there's a scientific consensus on it, but anybody who's educated enough on evolution will tell you that there are some things that Darwin got wrong. Darwin was one of the first to publish his findings that it seemed that various species adapted over time to various situations that they found themselves in simply because random mutations would be more likely to be passed on to their offspring. Speciation just happens when an isolated population has those genetic mutations passed on enough to the point where they can no longer breed with their original population, or with a long enough period of time. If you were to pluck one of the more ancient versions of that species out and try to breed it with a later version, they would no longer be able to breed. So you effectively described a version of what you would call, quote, Darwinian evolution, just our modern understanding of it.
Right. I'm not really. Yeah. If that is the case, then sure. I guess that's probably the case. Then,
it's probably not your area. I know. We're gonna have to start talking about slavery as I just spit all over myself. I got these really thick lips that just sometimes spit. We'll have to talk about slavery, but I'll let Ali finish up with this line of conversation first. But we're gonna have to go to slavery. I want to hear your spiel on it and just have a conversation about it. It doesn't even have to include scripture.
Well,
just general history, maybe.
Well, this particular line, I just wanted to know, like, where do you believe the intelligent design came in? Like, do you think that God somehow used the process of evolution to bring humans into existence as some sort of end? Or do you think, like, I know that the Catholics have a form of special evolution that they talk about where they're like, well, humans, when humans came into being, God decided to give us a soul. Like, where do you sit on that?
That's a good question. I believe things, if you heard of stasis, I just think things stay the same thing over time, and it could be billions of years. And things, sometimes, I guess the environment leads them to go extinct and things like that. So that's how I would.
So you don't think that anything has ever changed? You just think that the Earth was cluttered with billions of species that we just no longer can see? I don't think that cheetahs could exist alongside T-Rexes. I don't think they'd survive for very long.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sure, but I would say that God made cheetahs so where they can just exist as long as they can adapt to their environment, so they can exist, and eventually, time will probably take them out or something.
Like I could swear I've seen you in like YEC debates, like you know, cheering for Kent Hovind and shit.
No, what I do is I troll some people in the chat, but I'm definitely I do not really support young Earth creationism at all. No.
So, like, I'm really trying to drill down to what you actually think happens here, because you acknowledged earlier that the Cambrian explosion happened, which, by the way, touched my little geeky heart, because when I was in college, I started off as a paleontology major. I've told this story many, many times, and the Cambrian explosion is actually my fascination. That is my area of interest. I am absolutely in love with Cambrian era arthropods and can talk to you all day about them. But what's interesting, though, is that none of those species, not only did none of those species exist, but there's no evidence that during that time, even anything like, say, a lot of bony fish that we now know of exists. Like, amphibians didn't exist back then. So my question is, do you think that God just snaps his fingers and like new species come out of thin air whenever he feels like it? Because this idea that things don't change over time, the entire point of the Cambrian explosion is that it appears that there was a massive diversification of fauna over a very short period of geological time. So the fact that you even talk about the Cambrian explosion leads me to believe that you do believe in some level of adaptation. You even said earlier, I think that things change over time. So,
absolutely,
so do you believe in speciation, or do you think God just snaps his fingers at random and creates a bunch of new creatures?
Yeah, I believe in speciation. Sure, yeah.
So then my question becomes, what makes humans any different?
They were created in the image of God, the Imago Dei, that we have a special gift to make moral decisions. We are logical, reasonable creatures that the other animals in the kingdom just don't have these gifts. So I would say that, the Imago Dei.
Like what?
I would say it's like the intrinsic gift of a conscience to deliberate within yourself on what's right and wrong, to know that, to recognize that.
So like, how rats will refuse to take treats when they know that another rat will be harmed?
No, I would say that even goes beyond that. I would say even supererogatory acts. Have you ever heard of supererogatory acts, or not?
Give me the definition that you use, because sometimes it seems we disagree on what things mean.
Yeah, exactly. So
I've never heard of it, I'll be honest.
So supererogatory acts are defined as someone that goes beyond the duty of kindness, like someone like jumping on a grenade. That would go beyond just a general act of kindness. So it goes like it's an extreme act of kindness.
Okay, so, but again, you find things like, for example, animal mothers defending their children to the death, and rats, again, in a laboratory setting, will, if they know that their friends are being tortured or harmed, or even if another rat will not receive a treat, they will refuse treats.
Yeah, I think the thing that sets us apart is our ability to build and make and utilize tools. I think that's clearly, like, we can see that throughout history. Our ability to make fire, control fire, really changed the course of what we would become as a species. The ability to craft tools, that's been really the defining distinction between us and other animals, and how we were able to dominate the animal world as we did.
Right. We have an intelligence, a high level of intelligence to be able to accomplish things and like go to the moon and such like that.
I think we're getting more intelligent. We have more and more information every generation as a product of using those tools. But when we started, we probably weren't very intelligent.
So, Knock, I'm actually going to disagree with you a little bit. Even, like Divine Disbelief in the chat brings up even bonobos use tools, so do chimpanzees. And
I was going to say that same thing. Other animals
I'm going to say
use and build tools, but I mean, not
definitively
the way we have.
sets us aside aside like from other animals, there's two major things. Number one, the complexity of our social organization. Number two, our ability to communicate using language. Language actually allows us to communicate ideas across generations and like pass down tool use through generations, which then allows for more complex tool use and idea communication. There is nothing like that anywhere else in the animal world. There's rudimentary communication. The closest that we see is in like porpoises. They have a version of communication that they use that can even have dialects. But as far as language goes, like humans are the only species that we know of that have a complex enough language to pass ideas down through generations.
And now we see why I really brought Allie onto the channel, because she understands this shit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, but that's what differentiates us. But my question here, though, is if you don't believe that Adam and Eve are literal, you don't believe any of that, then what exactly, like, when did sin come into existence? Because if we came into existence similarly to all the other animals, and again, if you look at our DNA and you compare it to chimpanzees, you compare it to, like, there's an excellent book, if I'm going to read yours, I'm going to recommend one to you. Dawkins is an asshole, but the book The Ancestor's Tale actually talks about the DNA that we share with all other creatures. If you look into our DNA, we share a good chunk of it with other species, which shows directly the line that we have, that we've descended from other creatures. So my question is if you believe in speciation and macroevolution to a specific, to a certain degree, then what exactly makes humans special? Why are we subject to the laws of sin, whereas other species are not? And doesn't that seem kind of arbitrary?
Yeah, but that's a good question. And I think we have an intrinsic knowledge of what's good and bad. I don't think other creatures have that ability. The animal kingdom is, to a point, yes, they can be ethical to a point, but they don't talk about issues about racism. We don't talk about even sexism against women. We don't even talk about that. I mean, you won't see animals doing that stuff. And I would say it's the ethical stuff, the metaphysical advantages we have over the animals.
So you think that we are born with an intrinsic sense of right and wrong?
Yes.
Okay, so why is it that people don't seem to be born knowing automatically that slavery is wrong, or that racism is wrong, or that sexism is wrong?
Yeah, I would push back, and I would say that kids usually do. And I think kids are born with a moral sense of things, of what's right and wrong.
Then why do you have to teach kids to share?
Well, I think they do know. I mean, I don't know. That's probably a good question, but maybe they do. They just don't want to, because they're.
Not you're a parent. I'm gonna let you take over this discussion because, like.
Well, yeah, we're delving into a morality. We can get on to morality for a little bit. So do you believe morality is subjective?
No, he said that he thinks that it's instinctual, that we automatically are born understanding morality. I must admit that. But you think that, like Ali was saying, kids just naturally have this instinct of good and bad, right? Like they understand the difference, and they don't. Like, I literally, had to. My daughter was like 5, and she was going to stick the fork into the socket, and I had to say, no, don't do that. That's teaching her. You have to teach her not to do bad shit that's going to harm her. I do think like sharing isn't something that you should have to teach, but sometimes you do. I can't really ever remember having an issue with my daughter. My daughter just shares everything with everybody. She wants everybody to have her shit. It's kind of a thing. Like, stop giving your shit away. But except that my little sister did struggle with it.
Yeah, well, I've seen other kids that are on the opposite end of that. I think it just depends on the child, but like you have to pretty much instill what's right and wrong into your kid, and I've talked about that a lot of times. And then that kid will grow up and through life experience develop their own sense of morality, and they'll take from their parents what they accept and reject the rest. I think that's just the way we go about it. But yeah, I mean. Morality is another funny thing with me, because it seems like, I know that arguments can be made against atheist states and atrocities committed. But that has only really happened a couple times. Atheist states are very rare.
Right.
We've had atrocity after atrocity after atrocity when you're talking about theocratic states of any of the Abrahamic religions. To me, morality is it's not based on religion. It's just based on your life experience.
Yeah, I would say that religion is not necessary. I don't think anywhere in the Bible where God says follow religion. In fact, I would say religion's been in opposition to God, and Jesus didn't like religion or any type of organized religion that people they have their own set rules and
so
rituals.
why has Jesus's religion then went and done that same thing, create a dogmatic religion of set rules and places of worship?
It's because man wants to be in a position where they're like a social club, and they want to be able to control people. I think it's actually a tool to control people, and what they did is
I would definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, so they exploited something that was supposed to be authentic and had good intentions with Christ. Like Jesus says to deny yourself, follow me, and love your enemies. And what these idiots do is they make their own, like they'll use the name of Christ, the banner of Christ, but then enforce their own stupid rules. They'll make these stupid rules up, like, if you sin, the sin of the divorce, like they'll even say divorced people need to go to the back of the altar or something, and they just make this crap up.
Okay, can you define religion then?
Yeah, I would say a man-made system of rituals.
Like I define religion, I guess, as a dogmatic practice of with institutions and a set of rules. That's what I should probably look up the definition of religion, but that's what I've always defined it as.
The way that I see,
I think that there's a difference between religion and spirituality. I don't know.
I see it slightly differently. Like, I hate appealing to the dictionary, but there's one that always has fit for me, and that's a system of faith and worship, which praise, honestly, what you describe as following is very much that. Like, you can't say that it's automatically a religion just because, there's people involved with it. A particular belief set, a system of worship and faith, that is what religion is. The Bible itself does establish a religion.
Oh, in the traditional sense, right. But I'm saying they have perverted that. Man has perverted what okay, we'll put it this way. God originally, his religion was to follow the 10 Commandments and follow Jesus. That's it. I mean, the conditions the Bible said.
There's a lot more than 10 Commandments in Leviticus.
God's original religion was blood sacrifice, was it not?
Right, as a temporary covering for sin. It was a precursor for Christ, right?
But where in the Bible does it actually say there's a precursor for Christ? Because this is where a lot of Jewish folks I know get pretty upset. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of eisegete Christ into the Old Testament. He's not there.
I would say Genesis 3:15 is an inescapable passage where it talks about Jesus leading to being the precursor to atonement. That was a prophecy concerning that.
So, but why? So if the original religion demands blood sacrifice, why does God feel the need to change that? Like, didn't he create this system to begin with? Didn't he create? I know you're not like a young earth creationist, but you still think that God created the universe, right? So he created all the systems of the universe. Why did he create it in that way? Why not make it easier? Why even send? Why would you have to send a son to fix things to begin with? And I don't think that Jesus, Jesus can be interpreted in a lot of ways. I think from my recent research looking into Paul, that Jesus was actually preaching a very extreme form of Judaism, an extreme form of returning to the law. but I do understand that there are passages in that New Testament that would completely contradict that. So it's very hard to get a feed on what Jesus was actually preaching, but we do have a dogmatic religion as a result of it. And I see you siding with most of them at least when it comes to debates. So like, do you go to a church or
No.
do you
No.
just practice at home?
Right. I follow Christ. I'm a biblical Christian, and I don't follow a certain sect or any type of division, because that's what actually mean. What a denomination, if you actually look it up, the etymology means the division of Christ. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 1 said that, is Christ divided? And is in the name of Paul or something? No, Christ is not. There's no divisions in Christ. And that's what it was supposed to be that way. But you have idiots who want to make it man-based and not God-based Christianity. And that's the problem, the issue.
Well, I definitely, I think I agree with that. Like, I don't think that there's really any way you can interpret Jesus as being pro-gun or would be pro-gun if he were alive today. And yet it seems like a large segment of the Christian population seems to think so.
But I think there is
it's
a strong
really
argument,
weird for me.
though. I think
Right,
there's
I
a strong
agree.
argument, though, that Jesus didn't even believe he was there for all of man's salvation. He quite explicitly says that he's there for the Jewish people. It's Paul
Yeah.
that claimed he saw some kind of vision in the desert when he was like thirsty and traveling between areas that, somehow then Jesus became everybody's savior. But during his life, and even during the accounts that Christians take to be gospel about him, supposedly he never said anything about being everybody's savior. He flat out tells people when they ask him that he's there for the Jews and only the Jews.
Right, because that was in a covenantal sense, because he hadn't yet died on the cross.
No, he outright says, I am here only for the Hebrews. Like, he says that
Yeah,
during
at
his
that
life.
specific time, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, even after he died and returned to his apostles, and Paul wasn't one of those people, they were a Jewish sect. Now, the rest of Jewish society, I believe, considered them a cult, but they still considered themselves Jews. It was Paul that preached to the Gentiles, and I think Peter came along after when he saw that there was no stopping Paul. I mean, this is
Right.
still part of history where I'm really looking into before I make my second video on it. But I think it was clear that the first Christians considered themselves to be Jewish and their movement to be Jewish, and it was Paul who changed that.
Sure, but I mean, Paul did say a true Jew spiritual. He never said that a Jew is.
Paul might have, but I'm maintaining that Paul was a fraud. I mean, he wasn't even an apostle. He declared himself an apostle. He wasn't an apostle. He did not know Jesus in life. He claimed to have had these visions or experiences with Jesus after. I could make that claim right now.
Well, no, I mean the writer of Acts was not Paul. It was
his homeboy Luke. It was like his best friend.
Right, and Luke even says that
Luke
Christ
traveled the whole
chose
world
him.
with him. They were homeboys. You're gonna like that would be like, all right, I just had a vision of Jesus. Go trust my best friend because I told him yesterday. I mean, would you trust that?
Well, I mean, you have, historians that would say it's a genuine account. Like, if you can show some type of evidence, it's a forgery or some type
Well,
of.
I don't think you
account.
can be. I mean, we have Luke's testimony that he interviewed all these eyewitnesses, but we don't have those interviews. We have his word for it. I don't think you can say that. We have Luke's account that was probably influenced by Paul himself because they were homies.
Yeah, I don't even know if that's. I don't know like how that works out. I don't know. I think Paul was definitely there to see the risen Jesus. I mean, that's what scholars say. I don't know about the.
Paul,
You're trying to.
Paul wasn't there to see the risen Jesus. Paul was. He was at that time. He was still Saul, killing Christians.
First Corinthians 15.
Also, if we had a biblical scholar here, they'd correct you both and say that according to church tradition, Luke wrote the book of Luke and the book of Acts. However, it's not possible for Luke to have written either of them.
Wait, I don't
somebody
think
who was
Luke
writing
did.
in the voice of Luke.
I'm going with their narrative. I don't think Luke wrote them either. But that's like this is an area that I'm really new to, and I'm only looking at a very specific segment of I'm looking at Paul. I'm not Nathaniel or Chrissy H. These people are biblical scholars and could really fucking school me and you, Praise.
Probably, yeah.
Well, and the point is none of the actual gospels had names on them prior to the Bible being assembled. Like, they were just unnamed books with unnamed authors, and they don't even claim to be written by the people who they were ultimately named after.
And I also think it's pretty much like proven that Paul's letters weren't written by Paul himself.
Some of them weren't.
Yeah,
some of them were, and some of them were not.
All right, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, there's a couple of Paul's letters that have been proven not to be his.
Yeah, there's contention on some of them. I think one of them, is, forget Galatians or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul had a vision of the risen Jesus. He didn't actually see. He wasn't there when Jesus showed himself again to his disciples.
So my question here, though, is that Jesus himself, again, we're going to use just the four gospels as the evidence here, because again, there are no actual contemporary accounts of Jesus's existence. I will grant that there was most likely a historical rabbi that called himself Jesus and probably talked about some of these things.
I don't think he called himself Jesus.
Well, or it would have been Yeshua. But,
yeah, Yeshua.
But the point being is that there was a historical figure potentially who called himself this. He was a rabbi who had taught a lot of these things. Let's give that. If you take those four gospels as your only proof, there are many other, gospels claimed to be written around the same time. If you only take those four gospels as your proof, Jesus himself, while in the flesh and even after his resurrection, never once claimed to be there for everybody. It was one man who had a vision who then took over the church effectively and claimed that that he was there for everyone. And what's ridiculous about that is, my question is, as a believer, if some random person that has a vision that they claim is from God that radically alters established, doctrine from the Bible or other things, would you take them at face value? Because that's effectively what the believers had to do.
Right. So I'm going to try to address these claims one by one. So number one, Jesus did say he came to save the world. I mean, he did. He said to preach to every creature in Mark 16. That's after he resurrected. That's what I'm saying. It's a covenantal. When he was walking in the first advent on the earth before he was crucified, yes, he says he came for the Jews because that was still part of the first covenant. The new covenant could not start until he died on the cross. You get what I'm saying now? And it shows, he says in Mark 16 to preach the gospel to every creature around the world. So no, it is
the vast majority of the earliest manuscripts do not have verses 9 through 20 in them. Like, they were a later addition that has been proven to have been added by churches.
And that's contended. And did you know that
that's not contended? The earliest versions of the Bible that we have do not contain those verses.
Yeah. Did you know 998 out of 1,000 manuscripts have those in the manuscripts? There's only 2 manuscripts that don't have the second part of Mark. Only 2.
Please cite your source, because the earliest manuscripts they have found do not have 9 through 20.
Yeah, there's only two manuscripts that are earliest, so that's the issue. But again, we have there's other arguments. I actually made a video on this. I just can't recollect it right now, but I could share the video. You guys can check it out yourself. But
yeah, we can come back to that. I'll check it out the video.
Whatever.
I don't know. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. So if you want to continue on this, Ali, we can, or we can try to go to slavery before too long.
I mean, we've got up to another hour to talk. So if you want to talk about slavery, you can. But I would like to say
we got about a half an hour before we'll start winding it down, though.
But I would like to say that in terms of the manuscripts, there are even notes from other churches, from actual church transcribers, dating back into the 1st and 2nd centuries that talk about how some transcribers did not have 9 through 20 because 9 through 20 was added by somebody at some point. The earliest manuscripts do not have it.
I agree. Yeah, there's only 2. Okay, I would say the 2 earliest manuscripts, or 3, don't have it, but the other 900 do.
Wouldn't that be evidence that it's been added? If the oldest versions of this book that we can find do not have those verses, that means that they were added postscript. That means the original authors did not put them there.
No, but my argument, I think in my video, is they were under duress from the Romans, and that's why they couldn't produce more manuscripts with the earlier manuscripts, because they were threatened by Roman forces and such. So I sent my video. I would love to share it if you guys have time,
Well, except that at least 23 of the Greek manuscripts that you find that that post-date these, that are fairly early, also contain doubts about those last verses. Like the transcribers themselves contained doubts when they found manuscripts that contained those last verses.
Well, yeah, I like
so it's
to
obvious
see
that somebody added them at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just like to see citation, but you do know the church fathers say, most of them agree that the last part is there. It's in there. The church fathers.
Okay, but earlier you tried to claim that religion was a problem of humanity, and that the idea of a human claiming authority over those things would just damage your relationship with God.
Sure, but
so why are you appealing to an authority now that it suits you?
Well, no, but I don't even think. I think those are two completely different things. Like churches today is not the Council of Nicaea. I mean, those are two completely different things.
Oh, you want to talk about the Council of Nicaea? There's some really interesting things that went on with the Council of Nicaea. We can have that discussion.
Sure, yeah. If you guys want to, it's fine.
Well, I think that Nock wanted to talk about slavery, but I think we could probably set up something a little bit later to talk about the Council of Nicaea. And I would honestly love to invite one of my buddies on here who actually is a bit more of a scholar on this. Because although I can argue these points, if you want to talk to somebody who's actually hardcore studied these things like in college, then I would love to bring somebody on to talk to you about the councils that assembled the Bible.
I've studied it extensively. I would like to refresh on it a little bit before I would have a conversation about it. But it seems like that council is something that people just have.
It's a hot motherfucking mess.
Well,
and it's also not the
there's a
only
lot
one.
of conspiracy theories that are just inaccurate around that council. And it gets me into these fucking conversations where I'm like, no, this, yes, but yeah, that council is a shitstorm of a conversation. I would like to refresh myself on what's true and what's not.
Right. So it would just take a little bit of time. We could share, each other's data. And we can check out each other's data. That'd be fun. I mean, that'd be fun.
That'd be a good conversation.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to push back a little bit on Paul too. If you want to check out William Lane Craig, he shows it's the word there in the somos or soma. It means bodily. It's actually a bodily resurrection. I don't have all the notes right now. Like my brain is not like encyclopedia where I can just go boom boom like some people do. But
what do you mean a bodily resurrection? Like, so Paul was still Saul when Jesus, showed himself to the rest of the disciples. Paul was still Saul. He was still killing Christians.
I don't. That's a good point. But it in the text though, textually, it does indicate a bodily resurrection there in 1 Corinthians 15.
Well, he had a vision of the resurrection.
Well, no, then you'd be saying that the 500 other people had a vision too. That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I could say 500 people are here with me right now. Paul had a huge following, and they saw him as their leader. Cults generally agree with their leaders. I mean, that's nothing new right there.
Yeah, but I mean, so he also mentioned, James, Peter were also there, and they confirm it too.
Paul had the upper hand from the beginning. So this is the fascinating thing about Paul. So Paul was able to gain power by preaching Christianity in a way that didn't require circumcision. So if you could become a Christian and not have to get your dick mutilated, well, people are going to choose that route. So Paul got all of these Gentiles like, hell yeah. And poor Peter couldn't get nobody because he wanted to cut their dick up. So Paul got really, really powerful, and he got this huge following, and they would do whatever the fuck he said.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Paul and Peter had these I heard like these debates over law and grace and such. So yeah, you're probably correct about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Peter eventually, I do believe, came around to preaching to Gentiles and preaching that you didn't have to have a circumcision, but it was, I think, very, very reluctantly. And I think a lot of scholars, and Nathaniel could probably speak to this a lot better than me, but I think I have read where a lot of scholars think that Peter actually never did that's just something Paul made up.
Yeah, I mean, God even had to smack him beside the head there in Acts and says, "Do not call the Gentiles unclean." So like for some reason Peter thought that Gentiles were lesser.
Not just Peter,
people.
all the first Christians, right? Like,
Yeah.
the first Christians
Paul
were a
was
Jewish
the
sect.
lone- Paul was the lone outlier for a very, very long time until eventually, it seems what happened was that he amassed a large enough following that the Jewish folks ended up allying themselves, the Jewish Christians ended up allying themselves with him in the hopes that it would end some level of perceived like persecution, because even if actual Christians were not being persecuted at the time, there were Jewish people who felt they were. And again, if you talk to Nathaniel, there's actually evidence that Christians were never persecuted the way that the Bible claims.
I mean, we have martyrs. We have evidence of martyrs, though. So I think you just have to check out the data and make your formulation on that. So, right, I think there's both sides of the argument. I'll put it that way.
Well, like I said, I think that we should probably set up a discussion for, in terms of historicity, I think we should bring on one or two of the expert friends we have and do a moderated discussion on that. Not a let's go gang up, everybody gangs up type discussion, but a let's bring on an expert and have you guys kind of talk it out, and then Knock and I will cut in if
I would
somebody gets
love
yelling
that.
over someone else. Because honestly, I would love
That would be a
see-
great conversation.
I would love to see that conversation, because I know at least two friends, and you've mentioned both of them, who, either one of them could go fairly in depth on where
both
this
are
stuff comes from.
brilliant with this. I mean, this is what.
This is what Nathaniel does on Periscope.
Yeah,
Like, go watch his
yeah. This is what
Periscope
Nathaniel
stuff.
does, and Chrissy is. I mean, you might know her as she used to be called what was it? Biblical history expert.
skeptic.
Yeah, skeptic. But just brilliant when it comes to this shit. So yeah, me and Ali could just play the moderator role and let y'all exchange
And I'm
information
not saying that
on it.
because I can't have this discussion. I just want you to be able to have it with somebody who knows more than I do, because you'll get a better experience out of that.
Yeah, this is something new, and with the whole Paul thing, like I research it when I can manage to squeeze in a few minutes here and there. That's why it's been so long in between videos. I'm pretty sure that I have my conclusions, but I want to make sure that they're accurate conclusions, and that's the process I'm in now.
So, Knock, you said you wanted to talk about slavery, so let's do this as a
Well, yeah,
sumo.
that's Praise's strong suit. So I figured we'd let Praise have his moment. I'm going to argue pretty much on probably just a moral basis. I know you've had your knockout dragouts with Skylar and Dr. Josh. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ali. I figured that we definitely have talked about having this conversation. I think we've had it before, but I mainly had this conversation with Jill, and with him it's a shit show. To where with you it's an actual intelligent conversation. Although I disagree with you horribly about chattel slavery in Israel. I don't think it was like slavery in the South here in America, but at the same time I think it was chattel slavery. But I didn't mean to cut Ali off, so we'll let Ali do her thing.
I was just saying that if you guys, I was going to suggest that you open up with kind of some of your discussions, but if you want to let Praise open, that's fine. That said, we are midway through, and we actually have a larger audience now than we did at the beginning. There's 27 of you, and we've got 19 likes. Could you guys help us out with the algorithm a little bit? Ever since we reviewed some of Misha Popoff's stuff and, some other sort of activism-related content, we've been demonetized, and so the algorithm is not promoting our content the way it used to. If y'all could give us a thumbs up and like a like or even a dislike, like if you don't like it and you don't want to watch us ever again, like go ahead and do that too. It's all the same to the algorithm. Engagement fucking helps, and if you want to help us grow the channel and have conversations with with Christians and other atheists and polytheists and scientists alike, like that's one way that you can help us out. It really is the only way that we can combat the algorithm's tendency to suppress like demonetized channels.
Yeah, show some love to Knock tonight.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm like so back and forth on whether I should just go and delete all of my hate preacher shit and throw it on it, or not delete it, but throw it on another channel and try to remonetize. I know YouTube sent me something like I can't be monetized. I don't know what that shit was about. Maybe I waited too long. I don't know. But yeah, it does seem like the money is not like there was no money. So like it was an easy decision.
Support.
It was an easy decision for me to be like fuck the capitalists, but it's the lack of the algorithm really working like it used to is really just fucking with my OCD. It's
Yeah.
so
All right, so now
I
that
still
I've
don't know what I'm
gotten
going to do about it.
So now that I've gotten my midstream shilling out of the way, you've apparently got some really strong opinions on slavery, Praise,
Yeah.
and I figured I'd give you a chance to open with them. Like I said, if you can send me like an ebook copy of your book, I'd be glad to go through it, take a look
Yeah.
at it, kind of maybe even work with some of my, my buddies to kind of go through the facts that you cite and see how many of them are accurate versus not.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to really like work on that, but I want to hear some of your initial arguments so I have an idea of what to expect
Sure.
from your book.
Yeah. So what I highlight in my book and lay out my book is like 7 different categories. My first category is, should the term be servant or slave? And I give an etymological breakdown that shows that it should be servant, because the cognate of aved is avad in the Hebrew. And only like a handful of times that it has a foul context. So why is that important? Because a lot of people have presuppositions they bring into the biblical text, like, oh, it's just slavery. We're just going to call that word slave. They just like to put that in there. So that's my first section I cover. And then number 2 is Exodus 21. That's a huge section that I cover. It's expansive. But I cover... So at first I cover the beating of Exodus 21:20, where it sounds like, yeah, it's God's condoning where you can beat people with a stick. As long as they survive, it's okay. And I cover that, the casuistic law. So I cover that. Then I go into the supposed daughter, where the daughter's put. I mean, you could be construed that way, where they're looked at as a sex slave. And I cover that.
So my question though is, I didn't ask you what specifically was in your book per se. I asked you to kind of start off your argument about slavery so I can get an idea of what to expect from your book.
Yeah.
Like, what is your argument about slavery within the Bible, and like why you think that we shouldn't call slaves from the Bible slaves? Because like from what I understand of the Hebrew, like even my Jewish friends are taught that it's not servant, it's slave. That's what it was. It's probably wrong, but that's what it was.
Yeah, and we know historically that there was slavery all over the Near East. I mean, this was like a practice. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know Nathan could probably correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Josh, if I'm wrong, will definitely probably correct me. But I believe it was just a normal practice back then in the area. Now, not like Southern slavery.
You're right about that. Slavery was a normal practice actually throughout antiquity. There was some form of slavery in the vast majority of cultures, including actually some Native American cultures had a version of slavery, though again, it doesn't look like chattel slavery in the South. Some of it doesn't. Some of it does.
Yeah.
Some of it, you are a slave, your babies are slaves, all of you are property for until the day you die once you become one.
Well, yeah, I'd like to respond to that. That we have prolific ancient Near East scholars like Raymond Westbrook, and I'm sure Josh knows who that is. Actually, you went to the same college as Raymond Westbrook. So, I mean, I'm just going to name one scholar, but he defines a chattel slave as a voluntary servant. So you got to be careful how you use the word chattel slavery there. And this is a collective thing too, both among many ancient Near East scholars. I give so many citations and validate that. What's really going on is just servitude. That's all, the whole ancient Near East was involved in a collective system of servitude.
So do you think Southern slavery was the first chattel slavery then?
Yeah, the first real chattel slavery, correct? Yeah.
Then how do you explain Deuteronomy 21:11 through 13, which Brian Stevens brings up in the chat, but that's another verse that I would have brought up.
That is like that just goes against all of known history, though. Just all of known history.
These are this is the problem, that people bring their modern lenses into the text and they read these things in there, and that's just not the case. What was going on in the ancient Near East? But as far as Deuteronomy 21,
I don't think though that that's the case. I think that very much slavery meant a very similar thing back then as it does now.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Josh can argue about what the original text says, and you guys have had that ongoing argument. And I've told you before, like I trust Dr. Josh. That's what he specializes in. But you to say that the Southern slavery was the first chattel slavery. I mean, when you say so, what you're essentially saying is history is wrong, and you're saying
right.
history is wrong, and you're right.
No, okay. As far as our understanding of with our lenses, yes, but there was ancient chattel slavery, sure, before the Bible, right? I mean, before the Pentateuch was written, yeah.
So you call it servitude, and this is Jill's argument, not your argument, but he equates it to a job that we work. No, do you equate it in the same way?
Yeah, it's an employment and employer, yes.
So would you allow your employer to physically abuse you?
No, and I would say that the Bible doesn't either.
Like, how can you say that? The Bible is really clear about that. And I've watched your debates with Dr. Josh, so I'm not going to regurgitate those same Bible passages, but they're there. How can you say that? Like
21? Is that what you're specifically talking about?
I'm not sure. Like I could look them up. I've got the Bible, right here on a tab, but it's like what am I trying to say here? Those verses. What they say. You know that it says you can pretty much, as long as you don't kill them. That you can punish these so-called servants. I mean, the Bible clearly says that. We're not even talking about the sex slavery when you're talking about war. Jill justifies, well, that's what happens in war. No, it doesn't. We're talking morality here. Either you have it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And we have to look at it through a modern lens of morality, right? So we're saying, of course, they didn't understand it to be immoral at the time, but we do now. And God is supposed to be all-knowing and all-powerful, and our morality supposedly comes from God.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the issue at stake here. Would you allow to do what the Bible says that they did? Would you allow an employer to do that to you?
No, but I'd say that's a whole misconception of the text. That's the problem. I'd love to explain if you guys give me a few minutes. I'd like to
go for it, please.
Sure. Yeah. So what this is referred to by scholars is casuistic law. It's if-then laws, and they come in a series of laws. They're hypothetical laws. You can't just take one out of the series. So Exodus. So it would be a series of 7 verses that are included in these if-then laws. So you look at every if-then, and that's part of a casuistic law. So what they're explaining is when there is a death, when someone is beat to death, or a woman loses her child in some type of dispute and the child dies, then there is the death penalty. But there's the case if the child stays alive, or the slave is still alive after you beat him, then the law of what is it called? The law of reciprocity, I forget, it's called lex talionis, then comes into effect. So if your slave is beaten and they're still alive, then the lex talionis comes into effect, and that would be in verses 26 through 27, which says that if you even hurt an eye or a nose, I think it's an eye or nose or something, then they are freed. So that would, and with a fine as well. So that's where lex talionis would come in effect. So you have the death penalty and a lex talionis in a series of laws there. Do you get what I'm saying, or?
Kind of, but again, like it goes against history, and it goes against what most biblical scholars say. At least I'm no biblical scholar. I've seen these conversations between you and Dr. Josh, and I know that Dr. Josh has kind of went out of his way explaining to everybody, probably inspired, maybe inspired by your interactions, on making this clearer for people to understand. But like there's a difference between foreign slave and an Israelite servant, and Dr.
Right.
Josh has explained that to you. I mean, I kind of get a little bit of what you're saying, but it just seems to go against what most
I hear ya.
scholars would contest. I think.
Well, no, that's just grammatical. I mean, that's just pure grammatical evidence that is casuistic law because it has an if and then. So there is no escaping that.
I'm not sure. See, I'm not familiar with that
right.
casuistic law or whatever. So if then, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Right.
Okay, so
you would-
here's
yeah.
the problem with your argument, though. The Bible itself actually has 3 different classifications for slavery. They have chattel slaves, debt slaves, and forced slaves. The chattel slaves could be purchased from foreigners, but there were also accounts in the Bible of the Israelites taking, prisoners of war as slaves as well.
Right, and I cover this in my book. I'd love to, explain this to you guys, or try to, try to give some data on this. But first, there is no such thing as chattel slaves in the ancient Near East, and I can go right to. I can give you plenty of quotes, citations for that. What happened is here's the misconception. There is no such thing as foreigners either. There is no genetic distinction in the ancient Near East. There was no black people, white people, yellow people, brown people. That was not the distinction.
That's BS. In the Bible itself, it's not a genetic distinction, it's a cultural one. If you were born into a Hebrew family or into one of the 12 tribes, you were an Israelite, otherwise you were a Gentile. This is extremely well written, and you're basically you're trying to tell even modern Jewish people that they don't understand their own heritage. That's kind of an insult.
Well, no, they probably do understand because you even have the word Israelite in the Hebrew in Ivri. But if you check out, those are Hapirus foreigners. As you know, they're considered foreigners among modern scholars that in our modern context. But see, they didn't have that distinction back then. There was
So
only
I need
social
you to.
classes.
All right, so then I need you to explain the verse in Leviticus. I believe it was. I want to say it was 1244 or 244 that specifically states that you cannot buy a Hebrew slave, but you can buy foreign ones.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to explain that. So this is okay. What we're talking on Leviticus 25 is manumission, adoption through manumission. So people that were farmers that were really poor, like they were in like some type of famine farmers, or people that had unrecoverable debt, where it's just so far out that they couldn't have debt recovered. What they would do is go through a legal process called adoption and manumission. So they would be manumitted after their master's life ended, or the 50th year jubilee.
Okay, but yet again, you're ignoring Leviticus. It is actually Leviticus 25:44, which states that Hebrew slaves are never to be purchased in fee.
No, so you could purchase the goyim. The goyim would be people that would, like I'm explaining, people that have unrecoverable debt, or people that were in some type of famine or something like that.
All right, we've got at least one person who is of Jewish descent in the chat. Tartan, is that what goyim means?
This has been wasn't this a source of contention with Dr. Josh and you, like the meaning of this word?
Yeah, we've slightly gained new positions since our first debate. We have different positions on things.
All right. So, I guess my question is, I guess, is so even if if it's servitude, is it still moral to own people that have
Well, what I'm
immeasurable
confused
debt
about here, though, is that the word goyim means nation. The word that you're talking about, like Gentile, is more like nokri.
A piru, that's the word Israelite in Exodus 21:2, and that's what's being referred to in Leviticus 25:44 through 46. And you can have I have Jay Sklar. I can give you citations for that. If you want them, I can pull them out right now if you want me to.
No, I think that you think that you're accurate, but again, like you understand that major consensus. I mean, even like most biblical scholars agree that there was slavery in Israel. And why? So your argument is that the words are wrong, that they're using the wrong words. And I've asked this of many Christians that have come on this channel, and I have to ask it again. Why can't God use his fucking words right? We're talking about God, right? And he can't even clarify. Oh, I'm not talking about this word here, slave, that people 2,000 years later, 3,000 years later are going to find to be this horrific act that is immoral. So, I'm going to condone. I'm not going to condone that word. I'm going to condone the word servant, but he doesn't do that, dude. Like there was fucking slaves, and we all know that they had slaves. We all know they took slaves during their wars. They took women to be their wives. Like this is history here, and it's history in your Bible that your Bible doesn't even fucking run away from, but modern Christians do.
Well, yeah, I would love to address that. Just give me a few moments here. Like, well, number one, the word. So I think the issue is that modern English translations, they create a lot of it's confusion. So if this is why I don't like English translations. I like interlinear. So at least you have access to the original language. So why doesn't God give out these superpowers that he's known for giving out, and everybody can speak in tongues and understand the original fucking text the way that God intended it? Why not? Why doesn't he grant these superpowers that he has been said to grant to people? Plenty of Christians today think that they can speak in fucking tongues and they get this magic superpower from God. Why not? Why not grant us that ability to be able to understand his holy text in the way he wants us to fucking understand it, so there can be no gray areas, and we could know whether or not God condones slavery. Yeah, but he's appointed evangelists, teachers, scholars, lexicographers. So that's what they're there for.
Yeah, God can't use his words.
But that's his vehicle. That's how he conveys it.
So, but you're sitting here saying that they've done it wrong. Like you can't trust the scholars because the scholars are wrong. They're getting the words wrong. So why would God
it's not
do that?
Necessarily that. It's just the English language constantly evolves and words change over time in the English. So it's just an unfortunate thing when it comes to the Bible.
But the problem is that Hagoyim, which is the words that you're specifically referring to here, the nations it's actually specifically the nations are around you, which is Hagoyim Aser Sevibotekem, which again, that's very unequivocally specifying nations that are around you, not Israel or the Hebrews. They are specifically saying you can buy people that are not Israelites because the verse 46 specifically states you cannot rule over your brothers. You may not, regarding your brothers, the sons of Israel, which I can read that to you in Hebrew if you would like, that it specifically states this in contrast to the Israelites. The Israelites may not buy and sell each other.
No, okay. So I think you're conflating two words here. In Exodus 21:2-3, the word is avri. It's not goyim. So what?
I'm not referencing Exodus. I'm referencing Leviticus 25:44-46.
I know. I'm explaining that. So the avri in Exodus 21:2-3 are the goyim. That's what I'm trying to explain.
Exodus what? 21 what?
2-3. Which are their Piru? I think there's two words: a biru or a piru, either one.
It's a whole lot of reading.
Right. This is what scholars lay out. This is why unfortunately.
Ibri.
Yeah.
Well, but the thing is, the scholars say a different thing than you say, though.
No, they don't. This is what the scholars are saying. I'm just reverberating what they're saying.
But again, the Ibri is if you buy a Hebrew servant.
No, that's the common misconception.
How is that a common misconception when it seems to be nearly universally agreed upon by scholars, including by Jewish scholars?
I mean, I'll give you like 10 citations right now that debunk that if you want me to from ancient Near East scholars. I mean, I'll pull my book. I'll pull my book out right now. Give me 1 second here.
I gotta stop reading this shit. I get too sidetracked with the Bible because I'll sit here and read it for a fucking hour. I have to make a video.
There is no foreigner distinction. That's the whole issue.
Well, so this is an
But
argument.
again, I read off to you from Leviticus where it does have deliberately in the actual text a foreigner distinction. It states that you may purchase slaves from the
The goyim
nations
are not
around you, but
foreigners.
you shall not. But you shall not purchase from your brothers in Israel. That is a very deliberate and distinct translation.
Sure, but that's what I'm saying. They are the Vri in Exodus 21, 2 through 3. I mean, I don't understand why you're not getting this.
Well, this is the conversation you need to have with Dr. Josh, and you guys have had it. I don't know if you'll ever have another one, but this is the conversation. So it doesn't really matter what the word says, or it does matter what the word says. It doesn't really matter what if you're right and it means servant, whatever. That doesn't matter. The concept is, history believes that there were slaves. People read this shit, and they're not reading servant. They're reading slaves. They're still able to rationalize that, like you're doing right now. Somehow,
Putting your modern lenses into the text. You can't do that.
Well, but everybody does. So your modern people reading an ancient text, people are going to do that. But I'm not doing it. So history says that they had slaves. I don't give a fuck what the Bible says. I don't think the Bible is a historical book. I think it's a book of fiction that uses things in history to tell its story.
Well, you do.
That's my personal belief.
You know, the Smithsonian classified the Bible as the #1 historically accurate document of all time, right?
I don't really care. I understand that.
Why would you not?
I understand because I understand that most people are religious.
I mean, I'm reading
they're
a scholarly
biased.
article right now that's talking about.
They put stock in this ridiculous fucking book. I'm not gonna.
I got some quotes.
I'm not. I don't give a fuck what people say. I make my own conclusions.
And, we have a Jewish person in the chat that is also stating, yes, Exodus definitively defines Hebrew versus non-Hebrew servants.
I'll give you some citation right now. For our purpose, it is immaterial whether Kapiru, Apiru, Habiru.
I hate smoking on camera. Sorry to cut you off, Race.
Oh, that's all good. To give only 3 forms of the name originally meant, as claimed by Albright, a donkey, a caravaner through such a meaning seems to fit the life and movements of Abraham excellently. Whenever they are mentioned in inscriptions between 2050 and 1100 BC in Mesopotamia, Anatolia, Ugarit, and Egypt, they are clearly a social stratum rather than an ethnic unit. Even if the majority seem to have been Semites, if we may judge from the relatively few names mentioned, Bright expresses it well. The term apparently denotes a class of people without citizenship, without a fixed place in the existing social structure. And I mean, that's straight up from an ancient Near East scholar. The top notch ancient. It's H.L.
Well, I have a citation from the journal, which is Studia Antiqua, from Nathan Anderson, that talks distinctly. He's a
Sure.
He graduated from Brigham Young University, and I'm going through this. And I have a citation that says exactly the opposite, talking about specifically, like they actually talk about in this article that I'm reading, the distinction between Exodus and Leviticus, like the 2 different arguments there, and what appears to be was that the law from Exodus was frequently ignored, and Hebrew slaves specifically, which this author agrees that it was Hebrew slaves that Exodus was talking about, get released after 7 years. Not all slaves, specifically Hebrew slaves, they simply didn't do it, and they get admonished later in the Bible for not following that law.
Oh yeah, Jeremiah 34, but we're talking about Exodus 21:2 though.
Saying 21:2 specifically denotes Hebrew slaves. Exodus was talking about Hebrew slaves.
I'll even give you another quote.
Yeah.
Let me give you one more.
Just wanted to agree with this comment real quick. Yeah, I think I did say that wrong. It's not that I don't care. It's just it doesn't really matter to me. The whole topic of the Bible has history in it. There's no doubt, but I don't believe most of what the Bible says, and I don't think history says that Samson had the strength of 10 men or whatever you want to throw out there. But that was a good point. Saying that I don't care is just a shitty argument.
Hey, let me just finish this with last quote. I mean, if you can disagree or agree, whatever. So, quote, it is now widely, though not universally agreed, that the word Hebrew is linked to the word Apiru, which is found in a wide range of Mesopotamian and Egypt texts. The term described a certain social stratum common throughout the ancient Near East, namely a class of landless people, which might include political refugees, displaced people, outlaws, and others. The Israelites were appropriately called Hebrews while in Egypt. The word later became an ethnic name equivalent to Israel, but in the early legal text, the term Hebrew slave almost certainly refers not to native-born Israelites, but to landless people, the dispossessed Canaanites and immigrants who survived by selling themselves, their labor, into the full service of a landed Israelite household. Full technical details of the debate over the identity of the Piru and their possible links with the biblical Hebrews can be found in Gottwald, Tribes of Yahweh page, and elsewhere, see index and Niels Peter Lemke Hebrews. I mean, I think that's pretty clear.
All right. So we do have to start winding down soon. This is your topic, and I wanted to have this conversation with you. I think I know that you're wrong here, and I there's no way I'm going to change your mind. I could be completely biased in using my modern lenses. This was a good conversation. I think we should start winding it down. I had a point. I was going to say something really witty, and I totally forgot it. I've been smoking this cannabis stick too much today, I think.
Yeah, I appreciate you both conversing.
Yeah, my daughter wants some attention now. I had a point that I was going to make, and I got distracted. I can't remember what it was. Damn. All right, I got it. All right, so I knew it would come back.
Okay, so here's the. Well, I found a debunk to his claim. I'll let you.
I'm gonna forget it now.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say. So the whole the slavery argument itself is about God's morality, correct?
Yeah, if people want to make it that way, sure.
So you can sit here and justify, slavery all you want. You cannot deny that God ordered the Israelites to commit genocide.
I would also I would oppose.
You yourself said that the Bible is the most accurate book in the history of the world.
Sure, yeah.
So you can't deny that God ordered the Israelites to commit genocide.
Well, for number one, there is no
citizenry, on not just military, like wipe out everything. I would love to
explain this to you, Rage. I really do, because I think you guys, if you check this stuff out for yourself, you might be surprised what you might learn. For number one, I think genocide is impossible. It's to me, it's almost an oxymoron, because number one, there was no genetic distinction in the ancient Near East, so there can't be genocide. There can only be some type of mass, if you want to call it a mass killing or mass murdering.
Killing, atrocity, genocide, whatever he ordered them to do. So okay. I think you're wrong when they're invading a nation and he's telling his people to wipe out an entire people. That's genocide. But we'll call it what you want.
Yeah,
you can't deny that he ordered them to do it.
I would say not only did he did it on purpose, he actually over exaggerated it, and that's called hyperbole, and it's called war rhetoric. And what he tried to do is intimidate his foes through language like "I'm going to beat your ass" or "I'm going to totally annihilate you." Like sports teams, they talk trash.
So are you saying that the Bible isn't the most accurate book in the history of the world?
No, I'm saying the Bible is one of the most non-literal books of all time. So what happens, the issue is that atheists or skeptics, they probably take it too literal. That's the issue.
Well, no, I mean, didn't God command them to wipe out everything? Ali, am I like misreading something here? Like, didn't God command the Israelites to not just kill the warriors, the men, but
he overly did.
The old people, the young people, the livestock.
Yeah, he outright did. Yeah, multiple times in the Bible.
I would say he overly did. It's called hyperbole, and it's a polemics. It goes in the
So
category.
God
of
uses hyper. So you are admitting here on my stream that God can't use his word. He's going to be using hyperbole. He's going to be.
You know why he
God
did,
can't
though?
use his words.
war rhetoric. That's all it is.
War,
war
God,
rhetoric.
God's a war propagandist.
Yes.
Why?
What? Okay, but you know that when you're talking, if you're talking about hyperbole, you're no longer talking about honesty. So your God must tell lies.
Well, he does to the enemy because he wants to change their minds, what they're doing.
No, he's not telling lies to the enemies if it's in the Bible. At that point, he's
Well,
telling lies to his people.
that's who it was directed to. You don't think the
It wasn't
Egyptians had
directed-
access to this?
Of course they didn't. The Bible wasn't written during the time of ancient Egypt. It was written
No,
after Moses' death.
So would it be moral of us, Praise, if we as America, if we just went into, say, any country and just wiped out everything? Now we've done it. Now, I mean, I think I think as a country we've proven that we're immoral time and time again from the inception of our country. I've been studying World War II extensively, and yeah, I mean we dropped the bomb twice, so we have no compunction about human life here. At least when it comes to war. But would you call that moral? Would you call that moral, just wiping out an entire country?
No.
So, I mean,
And
that's the argument.
The
With
book of James condemns that. These human wars are absolutely senseless. And I completely agree with you there.
So can I backtrack to 2 seconds back to something we were talking about just a moment ago?
Sure.
With your
Yeah.
whole Habibu
Yeah, and then we do need to
argument.
wind down after that, Ali, or we close it out because my daughter is like super pissed at me now.
Okay, because I have a rabbinical scholar here who goes by the name of Yared Davidi, who talks deliberately about the etymology of the word that you're talking about. First off, the word in Exodus isn't actually kabiru, which is the word that you're actually, citing here. It's ibri, which ibri actually means Hebrew. Kabiru is a different word in Hebrew, and it only sounds similar
Right.
to ibri when you transliterate it into English. Kabiru is not the word in Exodus. The word
Yeah,
is
I never
ibri.
said that. I'm saying they're a class of people. They are.
No, what I'm saying is Ibri actually means Hebrews. Kabiru
it
is the
does
class
not.
of people that you were referring to.
Right. That's exactly right. And they are. Did you?
But
I gave
Kabiru
you
is
a
not the word that
citation
is used. No, Kabiru is not the word that is used in
of
Exodus.
Greece
Though.
are
Ibri is.
Habirus. Yeah.
No, according to this rabbinical scholar and multiple other rabbinical scholars, Kabiru and Ibri are not the same word.
I mean, I don't want to like sound like I'm being a dick here, but I would say that Jewish scholars have nothing compared to ancient Near East scholars. I think that they're outclassed, and their credentials do not come close to.
So you're actually saying that Hebrew people in the modern day are unable to interpret and understand their own text and culture.
Right. Yeah.
You're
I would
basically saying that those people are completely unable to study in college to learn about the scholarship about their own
not
writings.
everyone. I'm saying the sources that you provided. I'm saying that.
Okay, so because my sources don't agree with you, suddenly they're subpar. Like, come on, you can do better than that. At that
No.
point, that's attack.
But-
That's an ad hom attack against the sources. That's not actually disproving my point.
But number one, though, see, the problem is that your Jewish scholars are imposing their modern lenses into the text. They weren't
That's
there.
not what I said. I was talking about the etymological root words that these derive from. Etymologically, they are different words. They derive from different words.
I never said they weren't. I never
maybe
made an
it's you.
etymological argument.
Maybe it's you and the very few people that are trying to make this argument that are actually the ones putting their modern lens into this. See,
No, I'm citing ancient scholars, Rage.
No,
I'm citing.
You're doing what Christians do. You're trying to take things to go against mainstream
No,
scholarship.
I'm citing the profession of
but
these
you
people.
but you admit that mainstream scholarship doesn't agree with your conclusions here.
I don't even. I could say who cares because that's not their profession.
Well, and that's perfectly viable. That's
Except that a
perfectly
rabbinical
viable.
scholar.
I don't care about the Bible.
Except that a rabbinical scholar is like their job, literally, their profession is to study the Torah, and both of those citations come from the Torah.
Well, my point is that I think you're using your modern lenses because you understand that slavery is immoral. So you have to go out of your way to try to prove that what the Bible says isn't what the Bible says.
Okay.
And that's a very hard position to do because the Bible says what the Bible says. So
I'll just give you just two more quotes. This is from top-notch ancient Near scholars. Quote, the buying of a Hebrew servant, Exodus 21:2, would most likely refer to a foreign Habiru in Leviticus 25:44-46. And here's another one. Ethnic divisions, with few exceptions, played no role in ancient Mesopotamia. Many ethnic groups entered Mesopotamia and all eventually assimilated. Even former Assyrian enemies who resided in cities ruled by their conquerors were treated as equals. They were never called barbarians, Asiatics, no other derogatory names as corroborated.
Except you
Neo-Assyrian
never once have addressed it. You've never once addressed in Leviticus, though, which I actually read the distinction. You never once addressed the fact that the Levitican, actual verse itself, in the structure of the verse, calls a clear distinction between Hebrew and non-Hebrew slaves.
Because there is no distinction.
Except that the Levitican verse specifically draws a distinction. It says you may purchase foreign slaves, you may not purchase your brothers within Israel, your Israelite slaves. There are foreign slaves. There is a distinction. Leviticus itself draws that distinction.
Within the covenant itself, sure.
That's not the covenant. The
covenant
verses
Jews, yeah.
All right, we can argue about this all night, but unfortunately, we do have to close it out, Ali, because my daughter's not speaking to me now. I told her 11 o'clock, and I've been trying to make her go to bed early again, and she's just not doing it. But I told her at 11 o'clock, slightly after 11 o'clock, after the show, we would watch a movie and fall asleep watching a movie. So she somehow thought that meant an hour instead of 2 hours.
So
she's not talking to me.
As far as this goes, Praise, like I said, we can bring on another biblical scholar to talk to you if you want.
Yeah.
I would love to get you in a conversation on our channel with one of our friends if they're willing. But in all honesty,
we got to do this a lot more.
Yeah, I can't sit here and defend or even in any way justify the fact that you are cherry picking the living fuck out of your texts and even cherry picking scholarship in order to try and prove your point, because the vast majority of scholars disagree with you.
If I showed you Ivri was used in a foreigner context, would you change your mind?
Only if you could show that it's a mainstream consensus and not a single or set
That's
or
what
small
I'm
set
doing,
of
though.
outlier
I'm
scholars.
giving you mainstream scholars. These are mainstream scholars.
But I think that the even with that, I think that she's pointing out that this text shows a distinction in the text itself. That there is a distinction there.
Sure. I never said there's no distinction. I said it's a covenantal distinction. That's all.
That's not there. There's no mention of a covenant there.
But that's how you become a Jew. You're proselytized into the customs of the Jews. It doesn't make a racial distinction or a foreigner. You're a Jew because you have a brown skin. And there's nowhere in the text it indicates that.
I never said that. I think that you're putting a lot of words in my mouth. And again, we're at the end of the show. So
didn't they all have brown skin back then in that area?
Right. Anyway, that's the whole point, right?
It's not about skin tone. It's about culture.
It's about culture and skin color. Race is not.
You're admitting what I'm saying. There has to be.
Not.
There has to
You
be a covenantal
strawmanned.
distinction.
Okay, you strawmanned my argument here and completely ignored what I stated. You are strawmanning and rephrasing my argument into words that I never once said.
Can you please tell me what the distinction is if it's not covenantal?
The distinction is that if you are a part of Hebrew culture, if you are an Israelite, then you cannot be sold into slavery, versus if you are, quote, from one of the other outside nations, you can be. That's
so you're talking about land. Whoever lives in a specific land. That proves my point anyway.
It says brothers in Israel, meaning if you were an Israelite.
So you're talking about genetics now.
That's not what I said.
Well, but what are you saying then if they're brothers? What are you trying to convey here?
Oh, good God. Again, Knock is trying to wrap up. I've stated several times
we're going to have to have a part two.
Yeah, I would love to.
We're going to have to have a part two, and I'll make sure we'll have to bring the verses that's always in contention and make sure we have them ready to pop up, and we'll really get into this. But I don't know. I just think that I think you've been schooled on this, and you don't want to give it up.
I would
But-
love to be
but-
sober. I'm schooled though. I'm
Well,
I'm willing to change my mind.
I could be biased. You know, Dr. Josh is a friend, but I think I think he educated you a couple times here.
Sure, he has, and I accept a correction. I accept correction. I'll admit that. Yeah.
Well, you know, you're a good dude, Praise. So you come and you argue with passion. You believe in what you believe. Sky Out's coming back on next week. I have fun with Sky Out, but I think he's like a Poe. I don't get that from you. I think you really believe these things.
Thank you. I appreciate
You
that.
obviously put a lot of research into it.
I have. Yep.
So this is definitely your subject. But we'll wrap it up. Definitely for the night. So I'll kick it over to Ali, and she can then probably kick it over to you to let you show your channel, and we'll do our little announcements and get out of here so I can go to sleep with my daughter. Man, I keep hitting this thing. So I can go to sleep with my daughter.
That was very awkwardly phrased, Knock.
Yeah. Lay down and watch a movie and fall asleep. Yeah, like
Right.
she has her own bed. She's used it like 3 times in her life. She's a daddy's girl. She likes to sleep at least in the same room as me most of the time. It's very annoying sometimes, honestly, but I love her to death. So it's whatever.
So, Praise, I guess I will close out in conclusion with I actually have access to Knock's email. I'm basically his secretary. I'm the only reason he answers you half the time because I'm the one who notices the emails come in.
Yeah.
If you want to send an ebook copy of your book to his email, I'll be able to download it and take a look at it for the series. I can't promise you I'm going to be nice to it or promote it in any way, but I will go look through it, and I will provide a link to it in the description of the videos that I do so that people can look at it if they want to. That said, it was an interesting conversation. Thank you for coming on and having the courage to defend your beliefs. And even though it did get frustrating, you were mostly very polite, and I'm quite grateful for that. We have a lot of Christians on here that'll come and they'll scream over people and other things.
Yeah.
I feel like at the very least you did your best to try to discuss honestly, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you for
Thank
coming
you. I appreciate that, and I really enjoyed you guys are genuine. I preach both of your genuineness, and I can't say that for other people. So I respect that highly of you guys.
Yeah, I before we close out, I wanted to apologize publicly because I had said some shit. I got you mixed up with Sky Out, I believe, in quite a few things, and we had these misunderstandings. And I went on your channel, and we were able to talk about it. And so I just wanted to put that out there public because I gave you quite a hard time for a long time over some shit that I was just confusing you with other people. But yeah, I think you're a pretty good dude, Praise. I enjoy these conversations. You're passionate and you believe what you believe. And you don't get all butthurt when I start cussing and I have to turn off my camera and all right, calm down now. I'm not gonna rage,
Yeah, I got you. It's a lot of fun. I love you guys. I think you're fun, and if you're welcome to my channel anytime, if you ever want to come on.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back on again, man. It'll be fun. But we're gonna wrap up. Do we? So yeah, show your channel real quick, and then we'll do our announcements.
Okay.
So show your channel. That's the point.
Like a share screen or something, or
No, you talk about what you do on your channel.
Yeah, talk about your channel
I missed
where people can find you and what you talk about on your channel.
Yeah, what I like to do is I like to address skeptics' arguments against Christianity. Like we were talking about tonight, a lot of it's slavery and stuff, and I try to bring valid arguments that are not biased. Like I don't go to Baptist seminaries to validate everything I say. I like to do like ancient Near East scholars. I like to do other sources outside of Christianity. I like to just to discuss that and check my channel out because you might find something interesting.
Yeah, and you have a pretty big channel, but you have another one too, right?
Yeah,
that's what I thought. Because the first time I saw your channel, I'm like, holy shit, Praise has some subscribers.
Yeah, I've been around a long time though. That's probably why. It's over 12 years or something. So
holy crap! All right, yeah, man. As always, when you come on, it's usually a pretty honest conversation, and I think everybody that's actually been in an open room with you here on this channel has pretty much said the same thing. We do have a lot of Christians come on, and you can just tell that they don't. they don't really believe some of the stuff that they say. I think that you do. I think you're greatly mistaken about chattel slavery in Israel, but I think you believe it. And I think that genuineness is what should matter. You're not a bad dude.
Thank you.
I did have you mistaken, like applauding the NIV with somebody else, and I feel bad about that because you shouldn't be lumped in that group if you're not doing it. So I do apologize for that. Allie, do you have anything coming up? I know you have some shit coming up.
Well, the big thing is I'm currently working on coordinating with Cirrus and Ocean for a Hammered Out collab. I'm going to be coming on to talk about a serious issue in the Hellenist community, a group called the YSEE. They call themselves the Supreme Council of Ethnikoi Hellenes, which if you have any idea like how much of a red flag just the name alone is, then you'll have an idea for what kind of shit show you're in for in terms of us presenting the proof that they're basically an anti-Semitic hate group. So I'm going to be doing that fairly soon. Obviously tomorrow, we've got, somebody coming on for, the Apostate Alliance. Next Thursday, I'm going to be moderating a debate with you and, Skyout, which is going to be very, very interesting. He apparently just emailed you back and says that he wants to talk about science and the creation of the universe. So he wants to talk Big Bang, apparently.
That can be interesting.
And as far as other things go, I'm actually working on a video for the Pissed Off Polytheist, as you guys can hear with the shitty echo in this room.
Did Skyle actually spell science right?
I don't know. I'd have to go check. I'm
just I'm just joking. You don't gotta go look.
I absolutely do. Yes, he spelled science right, but he did not capitalize it at the beginning of the sentence.
Skyout. He showed his face on Scholar Fiction tonight. So maybe he's coming out as the real Skyout this time. He's been gone for a while.
But yeah, I'm going to be doing a video for the Pissed Off Polytheist series. It may actually be the first one now, just because it's been a while since the Steven Anderson video that I wanted to go at came out, and I'm working on getting this room soundproof. But I'm going to be doing a video on what is a folkist, because it's a question that I get a lot from atheists. It's a question that even polytheists debate sometimes. And since I'm going to be going against a group that I'm alleging is folkist, I'm going to put out a video talking about folkism and also the difference between folkism and things like ethnic religious protectionism, like you see among Native American tribes, and kind of how those things can be drawn.
Cool. Yeah, looking forward to it. I don't think I have much coming up. We've got what I think Thursday night we should do Shay and Callan and the Misha Loves, and then I think I told Sky out next Saturday night. So yeah, I don't think I have much coming up really outside of that. So
all right, well,
not a lot to talk about tonight.
I guess next Saturday we're doing the debate with Skyot then, and I will let Callan and Shay know that we're bringing Transgarder on for Misha Loves.
So fucking Skyout wants to talk science. Oh my god, that's gonna be funny. It's the new Skyout, y'all. He said he's been gone. Like the last time I had seen him, he was on Godless Engineer. It's like, you're stepping up, dog, and then he just disappeared. And I think he realized that we all think he's a Poe. So maybe he's come out and he's just decided I'm going to be the real Skyout this time. We shall see next week. I'm going to check out a little bit of his Scholar Fiction show tonight, because I have to assume it was a shit show.
Hopefully he stops claiming a degree he can't prove.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was so funny. All right, we are going to get out of here, guys. I want to thank you all for joining us. This was a great conversation. A
lot of fun.
Yeah, really enjoyed having you back on, Praise. Been a while since I've had a Christian on, and we've had one of these conversations. And you know, so in case you guys weren't here at the very beginning, like, Allie was going to be moderator. Praise is like, I don't give a fuck, man. Be part of the conversation. Praise is not scared, so you got to give him that respect. Thank you all for joining tonight. I'm gonna get this closing screen going. Still don't have Stupid Horror Energy on the closing slide yet, so I'm going to have to fix that tomorrow. Do you have a crush on Stupid Horror Energy like G-Man does?
Oh no, but I like what she says, those funny comments. Yeah,
she's pretty hilarious. Let me get this. Probably heard it there for a second. We are going to get out of here. Once again, thank you to my patrons. You guys are the shit. And let's get the hell out of here. I should have this shit ready, like, to go. I don't know what the hell is wrong with me, but thank you guys. We'll see you soon.